What's up, YouTube? It's the Second Son here, back with another video. So recently I put out a short film on my channel called The Art of Color, which was essentially about me just following my desire to be a better filmmaker and a better cinematographer. And it kind of goes into depth on my insecurities as somebody who is not that good at color grading, and my journey into trying to be better at color grading and trying to be better at just being a filmmaker as a whole. It was something that I spent about 3 weeks on from start to finish. I did it entirely by myself, just me and my tripod and my lights, and it's definitely something that I'm extremely proud of. And so, since it's something that I worked extremely hard on, especially when it comes to how I did the lighting, I thought it would be nice to get on here and break down a couple of the lighting setups that I used and a couple of the things that I did, and talk about some things that I would have done instead had I had a little bit more, I guess, better equipment or a little bit more experience, or just looking back on it, and just talk about my creative process as a whole. So before we get into it, if you have not seen the short film, I will link down below. It's right here on my channel, and so I invite you to check it out. So anyways, let's get right into it. For this first shot, the opening shot, which is I think the shot that I worked the hardest on, of me sitting in the bathtub with that sort of light coming down and in a fetal position, I actually shot this 2 times, and I shot it 2 times because I was not really feeling the way that I shot it the first time. And it's actually going to be a recurring theme throughout this short film, where I shoot things once and then I go back and reshoot it because I wasn't vibing with how I shot it. But this first scene, I lit that with 2 tube lights, some gaff tape, and a bunch of black trash bags, to use as negative fill to sort of direct the light directly down. And so the reason I used tube lights to get that sort of spotlight vibe is because the Godox SL200 spotlight that I had was a bit too heavy for my C-stand, and I just couldn't find a way to rig it that was like simple and safe. But I taped the tube lights to the ceiling and then taped black trash bags all around it to sort of direct that light downwards, and that's how I got that shot. And then to add a little bit of cinematic atmosphere, to give it a bit more of a sort of depressed and lonely vibe that I was going for, I also added a haze machine, which is also a very common theme throughout my lighting setups in this short film, is that I used haze for damn near everything. It was my very first time using a haze machine in anything that I've ever shot, and so I decided to just go overboard. So for the second part of the bathroom scene, I just sort of had the tube light at a good old-fashioned daylight balance, at I think 30% power, just right above the mirror to light my face, and that's the final shot I ended up going for. So for the kitchen scene, I'm not really gonna get too deep into it. I essentially just used my my Godox SL200 light with a softbox attachment on it, and then just shot with a good old-fashioned tripod. And it was pretty simple. There was nothing especially to it. For the scene where I'm opening the door into my editing room, I had a lot of fun making this one because I originally imagined this sort of like superhero-esque, ethereal vibe of like a grand entrance. And so to sort of make that into a reality, I ended up pointing my SL300, Godox SL200 light, just off to the side, outside the room, at 100% power, and I just pointed it directly at the room. In hindsight, I would have actually used a bit more powerful of a light, or 2 light sources, 2 mono lights, because going into the editing room and looking at it, I would have preferred it to be just a little bit brighter. But to add some atmosphere, I also added haze into the editing room, so that as I was opening the door, you would see a little bit of that haze escape, sort of giving it a sort of interesting, like atmospheric superhero-ish vibe. So for the shot of me reading the comic books, it's a little bit more complex of a shot than you would realize. Mostly because the sun was actually hiding behind the clouds on the day that I was shooting. So what I ended up doing was, once again, grabbing my Godox SL200 light, going outside to my balcony, which was on the right side of the screen, and just pointing the light directly through the window. And then I actually had two tube lights set up just under the bookshelf that was behind me, and pointed and set those to sort of warm sunlight colors, and then just had them shine directly down. Now that didn't really make it into the final cut. The light really, you can't really tell that it's there, but I like to pretend that, you know, it was doing something. But the idea behind that is that in this short film, I'm studying the art of color in every way that I can. I'm going outside and looking at sunsets, and looking at the trees of fall. I am reading comic books, I'm looking at color grading tutorials, and I'm watching other films that have beautiful colors in them, because it's all about learning as much as I can about the art of color to be a better filmmaker and to be better at color grading, and so on and so forth. I grabbed my comic book collection, which I love comic books, and I set them all in a nice little circle around myself, and I just decided to shoot from the top down to sort of get a wide view from the top down of me reading comic books and flipping through comic books and studying comic books, sort of because I wanted to get that whole surface area of the floor being covered by comic books in the shot. So for the shots of me studying film and watching films, I actually shot those 2 times. I shot that sequence twice. Once with just my TV as my only light source, and then a second time with a tube light, which was set up just to the back right of me, as a sort of light to illuminate my face, while the TV was acting as my main motivating practical light. In hindsight, I realized that the light that was off to the side was, in some shots, way too harsh. I mean, it did not look realistic at all. It just looked like somebody was flashing a flashlight directly on the side of my face. And, you know, it's one of those things that you live and you learn, and it still ended up in the final cut, just because on some level I was like okay with it, but it's looking back, it's something that I would do differently, you know. Like I said, I had planned this video shoot meticulously for about 5 days before ever even shooting it, and I had planned all of the shots and all of the scenes, except the scenes of me looking at the rain. That was completely unplanned. The story goes that I'm on the game playing Warzone with my friends, as I always do, and it's like raining really, really hard right outside my apartment. I mean, thunder, lightning, crazy rain. And I immediately put the controller down and like ended up like blowing the game for my entire team, because I was like, I have to get this shot of me staring at the rain. This is so cinematic. So I grabbed my camera, I grabbed my tripod, I set it up as quick as possible, and I just got some shots of me staring outside into the rain, and they ended up very, very good, and I was very proud, especially at the shot where the lightning flashes and then I look at the camera. I thought that shot was pretty good. For the final shot of me editing on my laptop in the kitchen, bringing it full circle from the first scene where I was in the kitchen looking at my laptop, I had also shot this twice. The first time I shot it, I just used a lamplight and my laptop's screen as my main light sources without any additional light sources, and thought I could get away with it. And when I took that back into the editing room, the footage was god awful. So I went back and reshot it. This time I used my 2 tube lights. I had taped one tube light and set it to a blue hue at about 50% saturation just behind me, above on top of the ceiling, and then I had taped another tube light set to the same color temperature as the yellowish salt lamp and the candles that were right next to me, and I put that just under the desk off to my right, and that created a pretty interesting color contrast of blue and, you know, the yellow/orange from the candlelight, and ultimately I was really proud of that. So for that final shot, what I ended up doing was moving the yellow tube light a lot closer to my face, just on the right side of my face, shot directly straight forward. And the problem with that is that I had originally planned to center myself in the frame, but the problem with that is that if I had centered myself in the frame, you could see the tube light reflected in the window in the background. That didn't work. So I actually had to end up moving a little bit to the side so the back of my body could cover the reflection of the tube light. So it's like, that's why the final shot isn't centered, even though it looks like it's supposed to be. And it's, you know, like somebody, a great filmmaker named David F. Sandberg once said that filmmaking is really just about problem solving. And that's just the way at the time I decided to solve that problem. And I think it turned out fine. So I don't know if I mentioned this before, but I shot this entirely in 8K with the Canon R5C. That was my first time using the R5C, and I wanted to challenge myself by using a different camera. And so I do have a review of the Canon R5C coming soon, but overall I had a great time using it. It was just such a blast to use. So I definitely say that I've learned a lot in that shoot. There were a lot of things that I did that I've never done before that I'm very proud of myself for doing, and I think I'd made some of my best work. And also there were some things that I didn't like any other project. You'll just find things that you don't find that appealing about it. But overall, I say it was a great experience, and it is something that I was really glad that I made. If you enjoyed the video, please drop a like and comment your thoughts. You can tell me what your favorite shot was, what your least favorite shot was, or some tips. And please consider subscribing, and thank you. I'm gonna see y'all next time.